Welcome to Buddha at the Gas Pump. My name is Rick Archer, and my guests this week are Elena Nezhinsky and Ilona Ciunaite. All right? I got that, didn't I? Elena is originally from Ukraine, Soviet Union, Russia, but now lives in Staten Island, which is a borough of New York City. And Ilona is originally from Lithuania, but now lives in the UK. And they both are kind of predominant figures, I guess you could say, in a website and a project called Liberation Unleashed, and have written a very nice book, which we'll be discussing, and have a whole process whereby they attempt to help people discover that ultimately there is no self. Is that an apt description of what you do?
Yes, very good description.
Okay. Anything you'd like to elaborate on with regard to that? It sounds about right.
Yes.
Okay, good. Now, I thought we might start initially by just kind of touching upon what the benefit, well, first of all, what you mean by no self and what benefit this would have for a person, because some people are going to hear that, and I'm sure you've run into this, and think, well, that doesn't sound very good. Why would I want that? And reading your own situation and, experience in your own life, I do gather that it really affected your life in a positive way to have this realization. So let's talk about that for a bit.
So how we start, Rick, because it's two of us, maybe...
Well, just like a normal conversation, whichever of you feels like talking first. And incidentally, your video has frozen, so if you'd like to, we don't want to reconnect, but if you'd like to just hit the off and on button for your video, and maybe while you're busy doing that, Ilona could start answering that question.
Okay. The benefits. Ooh, okay.
Well, like for instance, you said that you don't fight with your husband anymore. That sounds like a benefit.
Well, he fights with me.
Yeah, but you don't fight back, I guess.
That's the thing. What happens is that this voice in the head that is always checking with the past or with the future, it kind of stops bothering you. It just shuts up. And this is a big deal because in this way you can enjoy what is and without judgment. So that I can say is a benefit. But if people are looking for benefits, they're not going to see it because the expectations is the main thing that is in a way of seeing. So best is not to have any expectations and not to look up who has what benefits. It's just to have a look for yourself. And life doesn't change. It is as it was. The only thing that changes is the peace inside.
Well, in your case, it
sounds... that's a benefit.
In your case, it sounded like a couple of outer things changes. Firstly, your relationship with your husband sounds like it improved a bit, and you said you ended up getting your own tattoo business instead of working for somebody else, and you somehow attributed that as possibly a result of this realization. Did you not?
I can't say anything is a result of realization. It's just how life rolls.
So your life just flowed in that direction after this realization?
Well, I wanted to leave the place I was working for 10 years for the last couple of years. And it wasn't happening. Well, it did happen right after a couple of months, that somebody came in and offered me a place in their hairdressing studio. So that was just effortless in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, surprisingly, a lot of times when people do undergo spiritual transformations, things just kind of start working out better, effortlessly. Things just, not always, and there's no guarantee, but sometimes things just start falling into place a lot more readily,
Yeah, because there is no more resistance.
Yeah, good point. There's that bumper sticker, let go and let God, So perhaps we're getting ahead of ourselves. Perhaps I should have you both explain a little bit more about what this whole thing of no self is before we start talking about benefits of it or non-benefits or whatever. So why don't you both take a crack at giving us a clearer explanation of what it is that it's all about.
Actually, I can add to what Ilona was saying.
It's actually about this benefits, like you said. Um, she she said something about expectations, and I found that people have expectations that when they come to us,
Yes.
they think that they will they will be in a state of unity which is prolonged forever,
Yeah.
in a state of peace which will be always, and nothing negative will happen.
Right.
So I usually ask, if I see that somebody expecting something like that, I usually ask, and do you have any expectations how it will be? And then I get this description. Oh yeah, I will be peaceful all the time. And I would say, no, it won't happen. It won't be happening. So realistically, it's just the same life, because life was before when it was seen, life is continuing after is seen. Basically, for life, nothing changed. There was no self before, there is no self now. What changed? What changed is that the embodiment relaxes and stops searching and seeking. I'm telling from my own experience because I was a searcher and a spiritual seeker for many, many years. Classical meditation in Gurdjieff Way for many years, and then in Vipassana for 8 years. So basically sitting in retreats and seeking. I didn't even know what I was seeking. It's just a drive that is in the embodiment. And this drive can express itself in seeking in a spiritual way, or in shopping, seeking somewhere else, or even like in your own talent, like trying to find your own talent. And so this seeking actually is just going in any ways. It doesn't matter. In my case, it was spiritual seeking. And for me, the benefit, if we are talking about the benefits, in the outer life, I actually had a lot of distraction, but
Distraction or destruction?
distra- a lot of in my life was destroyed.
Destroyed. Okay.
Yes. But what is the benefit that there is no seeking anymore? Basically, the relaxation is on a fundamental level of just living what is, even though on a outside it's actually become less structured and more in some way more difficult. But there is a relaxation to live this whatever I going through right now.
Okay.
So this is the benefit.
Okay.
I would say for some people it's peace. They can get into peace. For some people it's relaxation of no seeking anymore. I guess it's also the same. Me and Ilona, we kind of a little bit different. She she got into peace right away, and I got into chaos
Chaos.
right away. And it was interesting because I didn't have any other examples of people getting into chaos like I went, but I just knew, I had a trust. I just knew this is it.
When you say chaos, was it an inner chaos, like a inner kind of traumas or disturbances, or you mean more your outer life became chaotic?
You know, it's interesting because when you see that there is no separate entity,
Mm-hmm.
there is no separate I.
Mm-hmm.
It basically you kind of destroying the illusion of some kind of structure. And after that, what can happen, and it can happen in my case, all the outer structure starts to fall. So all the structure that I had, family, house, job, everything, everything what is, how I call it, not true, will be destroyed gradually or very rapidly, like in my case. So I got into chaos outside.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you like to add to all that, Ilona?
Well, as Elena said, her life was totally chaotic. On my side, it was just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And you asked about what that no self is. Can I add to that?
Yeah, sure.
The no self, it's not an entity, it's not something to be seen. It's just a realization that there is no such entity, there is no such being, no soul inside of the body that would be driving it, and that it would be managing life and in control of anything. There isn't. That's what the whole liberation and unleashed thing is about, to show people in the most simple way how to see that for themselves.
Okay. And so if there is no inner controller or entity that's calling the shots or pulling the strings, then what is who or what is the author of action?
There is no author, it's just happening.
But
It's all arising
mm-hmm.
from nowhere in every moment, and there isn't anything that is in control of that.
That you are aware of.
Well, if you can say that life force and is in control of everything living, then yeah.
Life force, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, anything. We look at a single cell and we see all kinds of amazing intelligence orchestrating its function. We human beings understand perhaps 1% of what happens inside a cell, but from what we can see, it's this incredible thing taking place that far more intricate and complex than a major metropolitan city within a single cell. So there's something that's conducting, or some intelligence or something that's orchestrating that, and that's just a single cell. We in our bodies have trillions of cells, and of course there's the whole planet and the whole universe. So something is carrying on
Yes,
action in an orderly way.
But there is no separate self that
Right.
would be in control of a separate cell or separate human.
Right. So would you say perhaps, in some spiritual teachings, they would say that, well, that intelligence that's governing the functioning of a cell and governing the functioning of the entire universe, that ultimately is what you are. You're not some individuated thing. At the deepest level, you are one with that. That's what you are.
You can say that, and I know people would understand, but going deeper, every identification is assumed. If I say I am life, then it's an illusion. Life is. And
Yeah, well, if you're
life.
claiming your individuality is life, obviously that's only a very small expression of it. But there are these sayings in the Vedic literature, such as I am that. Aham brahmasmi, or that thou art, tat twamasi, or all this is that, sarvam kalvidam brahma. It's the idea that grand totality that is that contains and really is everything. That's what you really are, not just this teeny tiny little individual expression.
Yes, can say that. Equally, we can say you are nothing, and that's as true as that.
Yeah. They actually cover that too, and they have this word shunya, which means emptiness, and then they have the word purna, which means fullness, and it's just a matter of which side of the coin you want to look at, and it could be seen as emptiness, could be seen as fullness.
Yes.
Yeah,
But
and
that needs to be seen. You can't explain that to anyone, and you can't take that as a belief.
Absolutely.
So once you see, you kind of don't need to identify with anything. No emptiness, no fullness. You just live your life and be aware and notice what's happening.
Yeah, I would suggest that there are degrees of seeing, but let's get into that in a minute. Elena wanted to say something.
no, I just wanted to, when you was telling about emptiness and fullness, I was riding yesterday and in a car, and I just felt there is no identification, like I am not fullness, but I felt so full, like I felt such fullness. Not I felt fullness. There is just a fullness.
Right.
Everything was alive, and I am not that aliveness. It's just aliveness.
Well, it's confusing when you try to explain it because you have to use words, and we inevitably end up using the word I, and you say, I am not that aliveness, but, you know,
Right.
I think what you really mean to say is there is this aliveness. And some people get really silly because they try to talk this way all the time, and, you know, it sounds like silly talk, but...
Yeah, we don't, like I know, we don't actually talk Advaita talk.
I know, you're not
because
doing that.
we both not from Advaita and non-duality. We use I all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do I, and there are some very respected Advaita teachers too who think that that's just, you know, childish nonsense to try to talk Advaita talk, that it's not necessary or doesn't really clarify anything. Yeah. So. Okay. So. What? There's so many different threads we could follow, but. You did Gurdjieff, I think, or who was it?
Yes, it was Gurdjieff.
And then, you know,
Then Vipassana.
Vipassana. And how about you, Ilona? Was there some kind of spiritual practice background for you?
Okay. Well, the first time I saw something, that was, I think, 2003. And since then, I was looking for home. Internet, all kinds of programs, books. But I wasn't a serious seeker. I was always looking for shortcuts. Let's say if I would meditate, I would buy the holosync and put the phones on and let it take me. I wasn't a hardcore. I was always looking for the easy way.
Yeah, she's smart. She's smart.
That's good.
Right. So until 2010, that was Easter, when I came across Jed McKenna. So I read the trilogy in 13 days. That really touched me in the head. And since then, the deconstruction of belief started, which means I was crying a lot. I was writing a lot. I was questioning everything, what is true, and nothing was true. I knew the magic words, there is no self, but it didn't mean anything until I actually looked at it. And then I saw. But it took about half a year of this destruction of everything I thought that was true. And after I saw it, everything made sense, and that's it.
So somehow reading Jed McKenna just got the ball rolling, huh?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
He used to live in my town, and I've been told his real name. It's not Jed McKenna. And I've been meaning to track him down one of these days and try to do an interview, but I don't know if he would.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, I don't know if he would agree to it, but he's a good writer.
Definitely.
So it sounds like it happened just kind of spontaneously. You read Jed McKenna, it sort of intensified this deconstruction process, and then at a certain point enough deconstruction had taken place where just poof.
Yeah. Actually, just before I looked at the question, do you exist? I got really relaxed. We actually went for holiday, like spa, and it was like sauna park. I just completely relaxed, and just a days later it happened. So there was a lot of fire, a lot of searching, a lot of cutting yourself kind of emotionally and spiritually, and checking every belief and meaning and hope, and everything was lost. And then once I relaxed, they came to the point where I saw it.
Yeah. It's interesting the way that happens. And then once having seen it, it wasn't it didn't come and go. You didn't find yourself getting caught up in things again. It was just kind of a
Not once.
permanent shift.
It was
apparently.
completely clear. Then that's it. I never read a book. Actually, I read one book in 2 years. So seeking, everything just vanished. And yeah, I have no more questions. All I'm focused now is not myself, but helping others to see it. And that is way much more interesting journey than trying to find something that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Now, one thing that I heard, well, one thing I read on your website, and almost everybody, and in your book, almost every one of the stories that I read, the person would say, well, this is wonderful, but now I realize this is just the beginning. And even on your website, it says something of that nature. This is the start, in a way.
Yes.
Don't consider it the final thing. And yet you liberally use the word enlightenment and liberation, and usually those words are, they connote some kind of endpoint or final realization. So what do you mean when you use those words, and what do you mean by beginning, and where do you expect the road to lead as one goes from this beginning, which you acknowledge, to whatever the endpoint may be, if there is an endpoint?
Okay, I can say that we use words liberation and enlightenment just like a carrot for a seeker. So they come, and once it's seen through, then there is no liberation, there is no enlightenment. This is just a realization, and all this awakening is not an event; it's a process. So since that moment that the gateless gate is crossed, it doesn't exist. So since that moment, a new life is taken. Things that don't work anymore start falling off, and things that work, they start falling into place for some. But it's a beginning, because the realization is a point of crossing that invisible line. The awakening is not realization, it's living it, and that takes time, maybe a whole life.
Yeah. So, for instance, in your own life, I guess this realization took place a couple of years ago. How have things unfolded since then? Has there been a continual deepening, or a shedding of, like you just said, things that are out of tune fall off, and other things take their place? Has there been some kind of process going on over the last couple of years, maybe automatically, but, go ahead and answer that.
Okay. I call that process falling.
Falling.
Basically, if there is something I was holding on to, I had to inspect that and see if it's true. And if it's true, it stays. If it's not true, it falls off. And since I have done a lot of deconstruction before seeing, it wasn't that much left. It's still things come up, but it's not so intense, and you always can observe it. I don't get sucked into it. I just can always step back and see what's happening, just noticing it. It wasn't a dramatic process for me at all. I can't say much. It's all a story.
Yeah, no,
And
I didn't bring up the word dramatic, I don't think. I'm not suggesting it was dramatic, but I'm just kind of interested in, like, for instance, there was one woman who I was listening to the video, and she said, one of the YouTube videos, she said, if there is no personal self, what is the largeness that we are? That's next. And I kind of like that statement. What is the largeness? Now, if you ask a question like that, then you might think, okay, what is that largest, and to what extent can that be known? To what extent can that be experienced or understood? That seemed like the next frontier for her. Is there something like that for you?
Well, there was a point where I saw that nothing is personal at all. It's all one play of one life, and all these humans that we see and meet, it's just the same. It's all the same. Mm-hmm. We all are like roles that we play together. Mm-hmm. And this is fun if you don't take it seriously. If you do take it seriously, of course, there are problems and things to solve and wanting to control. But if you don't take it seriously, then it's just a play. So
sometimes the play gets kind of intense. Like if you happen to be living in Damascus right now and bombs are raining down on your neighborhood, it's a little hard to be cavalier about that.
Of course. But if you see that everything is happening by itself, not mm-hmm. because of what you want or what you can do to make it happen, then there is no more that aggravation if it doesn't happen the way you want it. So even if, let's say, something bad happens, there is no sting, you know? You just watch it, you see it, you note it, you move from there. But there is nothing that can hurt anything. It's a different way of life, I guess. Mm-hmm. So you see it all as one movement.
Would you say one way of characterizing it would be that you're not attached to the fruits of action? In other words, you have control over action alone, but not over the outcome.
Well, that is a definite knowing that you are not attached. Even if you see that attachment, it does dissolve quickly because you recognize that it's, I've been lost again. And then you see it again and again, that there is no attachment because there is nowhere to stick.
Right. Yeah, that's... a lot of people say that, that it's not that they're completely immune to having some little thing arise, some little fear or some attachment or something, but it dissipates very quickly.
Yeah, because you can notice it. You don't get sucked into that.
Yeah, it doesn't last for days as it might have before or something. Yeah. How about you, Elena? You want to say something?
Yes, I actually... you asked the question... Actually, I wanted to add something to that self, what happened. In the beginning, I had a lot of people to actually contact me and ask me if it's a beginning or if it's an end, what it is, right? Mm-hmm. And I read a lot of classical texts, and they have this classical text about stream entry.
Stream
entry, yeah.
Okay.
So basically, how would I explain, especially people who were meditating a lot, trying to get to some kind of enlightenment, and for some reason I got those people mostly. People who meditate in 25 plus years.
When you say you got them, you mean you were in touch with them?
Yeah, they were like reaching to me. Yeah,
okay.
They were reaching on email, finding me.
Sure.
They heard about this girl who are not in retreats anymore, and I guess they were curious how is that works. Mm-hmm. So I would explain them like you can sit on a bank of the river and meditate for 25 years. But before, like, you sit on the bank on the river and meditate. And what is meditating? It's that construct, it's that self that is reaching somewhere. Until you step into the river, and the river is actually flow of life. It is just this what happening. Until you step into the river, who is sitting and meditating is this self. So basically, that's why a lot of people just continue to meditate, continue to seeking and searching, because that construct is that belief in the mind, in the imaginary self that can gain that benefit you was asking about, that benefit of spiritual advancement, that benefit of my enlightenment, my realization. So that they in Buddhist tradition they have this anatta, no self, and it's one of the attainments, stream entry, when you actually step into the river. How you step into the river, we call it going through the gate. Same thing, right? So seeing that this construct in the mind is an illusion. There is no separate entity and there is nothing to gain. And it's only a beginning. You step into the river and then you become a river, so to speak, and river takes you to wherever it takes you. And then you asked Ilona how it's actually working now because there is no structure anymore, right? So before I had a structure, I knew that I'm this kind of person and I should do this and I should go to work and do this and that, and now there is no structure. And you're right that you're asking this question because actually everything happens. Before you do, you perform everything in life on kind of motivation. You motivate yourself. And then when the structure of the self is seen that it's just an illusion and basically whatever happening is happening, it's life, what happened is the inspiration comes out. Now you run on inspiration. That's why a lot of things that is not true in somebody's life start to deconstruct, start to fall away, like Ilona said, falling, breaking, if it's dramatic, or gradual process. Because by inspiration, you can't continue do what you don't like to do, don't need, had some kind of structure to do it. A lot of people change what they do because they can't continue to do their 9-to-5 job. They suddenly start to do something which they like. Like, I am not sure, I don't know about you, Rick, but what do you do now? You're doing by inspiration, right? It's your inspiration.
What we're doing right now is my inspiration. I still have a day job, which if I quit, there would be implications. But, changes aren't always necessarily abrupt. And
Yes,
one thing kind of morphs into the next,
exactly.
in its own
Yes.
sweet time.
Yes. In some ways it's more dramatic. In some cases it's more gradual. Yes.
I spent 25 years living out of a suitcase and just doing what I wanted to do at the drop of a hat. At a certain point, I was getting to a certain age. I didn't have any money whatsoever, and I was married. And we thought, we better build a little bit of stability here. And so one thing led to the next, and I have a pretty good job and have paid off a house and, built up a little savings. And, and now as I'm reaching more of a retirement age, I'm, thinking, okay, it would be nice to have that taper down and have this kind of take its place as actually something I could do full time. But there is definitely, I understand what you're saying about, in Indian language they have this word dharma. You're doing your dharma means you're doing that which you're really in tune with at a deeper level. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And just one comment on the meditation thing. Somebody on your blog said let's see, what did he say? With regard to me, in preparation for this interview, he said, if he asks questions that you're not interested in, just mention transcendental meditation. That usually gets him off the current topic for 5 minutes or so. I don't want to get off the current topic for 5 minutes, but I just want to mention that, there are about as many different kinds of meditation as there are liquid, and not all liquids have the same effect. And by the same token, not all types of meditation work exactly the way you said. And some can actually be a means of stepping into the stream, just as, reading, what's his name was a means for Ilona, Jed McKenna. And, for other people it might, I've interviewed people who've taken some drug and it's kind of knocked them out of their structure and into a totally, shifted them into, we could say, the stream. And for other people it was, well, one woman I interviewed, her grandmother died, and that night she went to bed thinking, geez, I wonder what happens when you die. And she woke up in the morning and her kundalini was on fire and things were just kind of like changing in her life, and her life has just changed dramatically. So there could be all kinds of different means to facilitate or to be a catalyst, for this kind of shift.
Yes, actually it's interesting because Ilona mentioned Jed McKenna, and Jed was also one of the guys who brought me to look up if I'm actually doing what will easy my search. Yeah, same thing. And I can tell you because I left Vipassana before look like for no, like that self does not exist. I left Vipassana. I felt it just doesn't work.
Right.
And I went to Adyashanti retreat, okay? And Adyashanti retreat was so easy in comparison to where I was sitting before. As Ilona said, as she went to a spa, I went to Adyashanti retreat. It was like a spa for me.
Yeah.
I completely relaxed. Like I relaxed, and in comparison, Ilona, to Vipassana, Adyashanti retreat is just like a spa.
Nice.
He's a very natural guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I relaxed, and actually, as I relaxed, what happened that I end up in a state of unity. So the structure fall off, and what's interesting that in that state, I remember it many states that I was in the same unity through my life. In childhood, when I was a little child, and then a little bit bigger, and then an adult, I just forgot about it.
Yeah.
Like in our like ordinary like state, we don't remember those moments. And when I was in that unity state, I remembered all these moments. When I came back from Adyashanti retreat, it lasted for some time, but I noticed that I was reaching back for that state. I was always like reaching back, and because of that reaching back, I realized that it's a state. Every time you reach back into the past, you're not right now, you're not satisfied what is right now. It's just a pointer that it's a state. And a state is it's not permanent. It comes and goes. So then I started to look how I understood this is not what I'm looking for, the state. Even though it's very nice, and it lasted for a month or something. But that reaching back pointed me that it's a state and it's not what I'm looking for. And then I got into Jed McKenna, and then I got with Ilona. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, in fact, just this morning I was listening to a recording of an interview with Papaji by David Godman, I think his name is, or Goodman. And he was telling a story about how he met Ramana Maharshi, and he had been around the other side of the mountain, Arunachala, and he came to meet Ramana Maharshi, and Ramana Maharshi said, well, what were you doing? He said, I was playing with Krishna. He was a Christian devotee. And he said, well, is he with you now? And he said, no. And he said, well, that which comes and goes is illusion, you know.
Yeah. Very nice. Like that.
Yeah.
I really like that. Yeah.
Mm.
It's I want to add a little bit. When I work with people, we usually have a conversation, or right now I don't work with actually I don't guide people. I help guides to learn this process.
Mm-hmm.
So I would come and there is a conversation. It can be very long. I would not even read this. I would just look at the last reply. What is now? Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't matter what was before, what he was answering, what was the realization before, what he saw, what kind of states, what he like think. But right now, what is now? So if I don't understand, if I don't see right now where he is, I would just ask a question. And at that moment, I would kind of access where this person is.
Mm-hmm.
So just illustrate your picture, your story about the Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the Krishna is not with you right now, it was a state.
Right, right.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything to that, Ilona?
No.
Okay, good. So I got a lot of emails and feedback from people who, well, we could go to, I could go into what I was about to say, or, you know, do you want to talk a little bit more about the process you put people through? I understand there are certain questions, maybe final questions that you ask. Maybe you don't want to talk about those final questions in this interview because this interview will just be an introduction for some people and it wouldn't be appropriate. But is there something you'd like to say more about the process that you put people through or lead people through in order to, you know, bring this realization about?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I can talk about the process. Basically, we have people coming from all different places and
Right.
different walks of life and different lives. Some are seekers, others not so much. But everything ends up at the gate. Let's call this gate the line that needs to be crossed, seeing no self. So everything ends up at the gate. It doesn't matter which path you come from.
Right.
You arrive at the gate sooner or later. Now, to pass through the gate, you have to leave all the expectations behind and all the fear. And you have to know that fear is a friend. It's not something to be feared of. So once you pass through expectations and the fear, then it's easier. And then we question what is real, what is imaginary, because it's very difficult for some people to see what is imaginary. Let's say Santa. This is one of the famous characters now in Liberation Unleashed, or Batman, you know. And we ask people, what's the difference between you and Batman? Do you look for a Batman in the room right now? And they say no. Well, why do you look for the self? It's just the same. So there is this other aspect of the story, and seeing how story just gets narrated by itself. And then the biggest part is looking at the thoughts themselves. Basically, the question is, where do the thoughts come from? And you can imagine how many people never even thought about that. So we ask a question, and they come back with the answer. And then we know what to ask again.
And this all takes place through email, pretty much?
Email, Facebook, forum. Forum is the main platform now.
Forum, okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not like a Skype conversation, face-to-face. It's more like all typed out.
Yeah, see, when you communicate very quickly, the answers usually come from the mind. And when you have time to look at it, look at the question, spend time with it, sit with it, then you get a different answer. It's not a quick, right now, wherever I remember I read. It's something coming from a deeper.
Okay.
Yeah. So we give them exercises as well, and go through different points. And literally, it's seeing that there is no self. But how to get to that point, everyone is different. And all depends on how many beliefs you have already So sometimes it takes months to deconstruct beliefs. Other times it's just like one question and people pop. So.
How many people have you worked with so far?
100? More than 100?
Several hundred?
I can say that.
Yeah.
Not everyone goes through the gate.
Right.
Not everyone is ready.
Could you give a percentage?
Oh, maybe half.
Okay.
Maybe. Well, I don't know.
What happens to the other half? Do they give up or?
Sometimes they give up. Other times they come back, even like half a year later. So
Yes.
I can't say that there is escape from that question. So once the idea gets in your head, it finds a way. But
and are there
lots of
people?
resistances, yeah.
Are there people who go through the gate, so to speak, and then 6 months later they think, "Wait, I don't think I went through the gate," you know, because things aren't going so well.
Happens a panic attack, like, oh my God, I didn't expect that, and then we go again.
Yeah.
What expect? There is nothing to expect. What is? That is what is. It doesn't matter what you expect. That needs to burn away or fall away. Yeah.
You want to add anything, Elena?
I would add that it's interesting because I found, especially in the beginning, very difficult to work with people who know a lot.
Yeah.
With people from non-duality and Advaita, I actually feared them.
Because they'd be so intellectual with you, or so.
You know, it's interesting because they just they have all these beliefs about mostly already beliefs like identification with consciousness, awareness, something bigger. So it's kind of more comfortable now. I'm not this little me, but I'm this big, nice awareness. And I found that very challenging to work with in the beginning. I worked a lot with Vipassana people, and they were easier for me to work with because they used to sit in a meditation and watch the thoughts, sensations, feelings. Basically, I would just, it would be easier for me because they didn't have any illusions about where thoughts come from, all these identifications with awareness and consciousness and luminous lightness. Now I can I can actually work with people who have this identification, but before it was kind of a challenge for me. Yeah.
Yeah, someone told me that you guys kind of have a problem with a lot of teachers these days, such as Karen Richards and Rupert Spira and Bentinho Massaro and Francis Lucille and Jeff Foster and even Ramana Maharshi. I don't know if this is true because I haven't really been following. Well,
No, that's not true.
problem in the sense that they may speak of
So funny.
a bigger awareness as being the self, you know, that, okay, fine, you're not the self. There is no self as far as individuality is concerned because you are that cosmic awareness, that larger awareness, and that somehow that kind of teaching clashes with your understanding or your approach to this. Is that true or no?
Can I say something?
Sure, yes, please.
Okay, we don't have a problem with teachers or what they teach because we don't teach. We are not teachers. We only point people to see for themselves.
Okay.
And this word self is very confusing for those who want to see it, who are trying to see it, because self, it's me. And the big self, the capital S or small self, it's all identification. So
Wait a minute, what is identification? Small self? Large self?
yeah. So
Well, wait a minute, what do you mean by identification?
what I mean by identification is saying, I am awareness. That is identification. I am space. This is identification. Everything that says I am this or I am that, that is identification. So in the seeing, the identification drops. It doesn't affect uniqueness. It doesn't affect what is. It affects the thinking, what I am.
I think a person could definitely have an orientation where not based so much on deep experience, but based on a belief or an intellectual concept, they might say, I am just awareness. And that would be, like you say, it would be, you could call it identification. It's not really deeply genuine. They're kind of mistaking an intellectual understanding for actual liberation or actual realization. But it would also be possible for a person to say, I am that wholeness, I am Brahman or whatever, and for it not to be a limited, overshadowed, trapped, identified state, for it to actually be given the woeful inadequacy of words, they're not really conveying the experience, but they could very well be a genuine realizer making such a statement, and traditionally many have it's one of the traditional Mahavakyas in the Upanishads, I am that. Doesn't mean that I, this little individual guy, am that. It means that alone is, and that the realization of that alone is has dawned, and I'm just expressing it in human terms as best I can.
Yes.
Yes,
Agreed.
can I add?
Please.
What you said, it's true, in a sense that a lot of people, they express their own experience. It's an experience. A lot of people express identification. So basically, right now we have some people coming to us and they had an experience already with self fallen, the illusion of sin, illusion of self.
Mm-hmm.
And they are coming from the tradition where they express it as, I am this light, love, consciousness. And then what we do, we actually check. We do the same process with them. We check if it's actually is their own experience or it's a learned belief.
I see.
From the books, from other teachers, and yes, and the same process. We have this process for everybody who comes to Liberation Unleashed, and at the recently a lot of people actually come who don't need to see that self does not exist. They already saw it. Why they come? Because they see community contributing to awakening of others. Like ordinary people help each other. They feel they want to serve also, and they already saw that self is not a real. They come and they want to help. We check them just the same like other people, just to make sure that they saw it and not have identification, so not to bring not so they can help others,
Yeah. No, that's good. I appreciate that.
Yes.
And I like the kind of quality control aspect of it. And in fact, I have a Facebook friend who is one of those people, and had an awakening before she came to you guys, but then, I don't know if she's still doing it, but for a while she was serving as one of your teachers or guides or whatever you call them. And undoubtedly you put her through that process before letting her do that to make sure she,
Yeah, we don't want to confuse people. We want them to get unconfused.
Right.
So
and it is very prevalent, actually. Yeah. No, I agree. And unfortunately, it is rather prevalent that people get good with the terminology. They go to a few songs, read a bunch of books, get good with the terminology, and then sometimes even set themselves up as teachers. Whereas they actually haven't had the experience that they're talking about, and they may believe they have had it, but they might very well be confusing the understanding for the experience.
Yeah, and what it's easy for me in some way because English is my second language. So basically, I would say, can can you stop using all this like
Terminology.
complicated words? Imagine that I'm a child and you explaining what is awakening to a small child.
Hmm.
So that's how I go with it. And or I would say I just don't understand what you're saying. Just can you repeat it more like in a simple language? Awakening is if it's an experience is actually absolutely simple thing. So and it can be explained in a simple words. Me and Ilona, our language is not English, right? And we work with with everybody, and everybody understands us what we want to point to. So it's not necessary to have all this um, elaborate vocabulary about consciousness and luminous
Yeah.
being and yes.
It's sort of a, some people are intellectually inclined, but it actually can be an impediment. As Jesus said, except you be as little children, you shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. So
Yeah,
he was advocating simplicity.
yeah.
Do you ever work with Lithuanians and Russians in their native languages?
It's
Um,
actually interesting because just recently we have several Russians came. All this time we were working with people all over the world
Hmm.
and no Russians, just one Lithuanian. You remember, Ilona?
yeah.
And what happened, one of our guides went to Tiro this summer, and I guess by word of mouth, people now come from Moscow,
Hmm.
and we worked with several of them, and I'm very happy because I'm 20 years in America, and I had no idea how to work with Russian people. I I didn't read any Russian book in 20 years, so I don't know all these words, all this spiritual language. My spiritual so-called language is English.
Mm.
Yeah,
So you
so we have some
have
people.
to find Russian equivalents. Maybe you should just use Sanskrit words, and it won't matter. Huh. I got some interesting emails from people. This one was very thoughtful, this guy. He felt that what you were doing was perhaps very effective for people. He himself underwent a profound awakening some years ago, and I think you would acknowledge he had gone through the gate if you put him through the test. But here's some comments he made, and perhaps we can discuss them. He said, it's one thing to liberate the notion of an I as a primary reality. Sorry for the big words. It's another thing to liberate all experience and behavior from notional attachment constraints. What
Oh,
do you, did you get the question? You know what he's saying there?
yes, yes. He's talking about sankharas probably,
So yeah,
about
it could be some scars, vasanas. It's one thing to sort of realize, oh, there is no self, and
oh
then,
yes.
but you could have a shitload, pardon the language, of stuff that baggage that hasn't been,
Inspected and released.
inspected and released and unloaded. And I suppose, as you say earlier, that could take a lifetime.
Yeah.
You want to
Um,
elaborate on that, any? There's some more he says too, if you'd like me to read it.
okay.
He said, it's a little bit of a long paragraph, but I think it's well written and insightful. He says, I respect their logic and insights on this particular subject. It's important stuff for the realization of unity. But so what? How difficult is it to realize that there is only experience and there is no I in control? However, this unity can be an inch deep with little implication. It just depends on what room is opened. How deep is the non-dual experience? What happens when the I is gone? Is there divinity in the room or just emptiness? Is there compassion or just I don't give a shit? Is there crazy wisdom or embodied wisdom? Is the freedom simply internal and you're a control freak with everyone else? So I think what he's saying, I mean, we've seen teachers who claim to be realized and they behave reprehensibly with others. And there's a lot of corruption and a lot of problems. So I think he's saying that it's not enough to just realize there's no I, that real embodied realization to be worth anything should be a complete package where, as he says, there's divinity in the room and not just emptiness.
Can I say something?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I am not a complete package.
They're few and
I
far between, believe me.
okay. I do what I can
Hmm.
right now, and after many years of searching, I was just drawn to help others to see what I saw and just relax and start just living. And like I can't control what will be with somebody whom I help. Just like what I can't control anything in my life. It's just whatever happening right now. A lot of it uncomfortable,
Hmm.
but um, it's not. I'm not suffering.
Yeah,
there is
that's
no
big.
suffering.
That's big.
Yes. So yeah, that package.
And
Everybody
would you
has
say you're
different
not suffering
package.
because there's no one to suffer? Is that why you're not suffering? There's no sufferer yet anymore to be found?
First of all, there is no suffering because there is no seeking, and
Right.
that drive to seek to for I can't even say for enlightenment. Uh, I I had the drive to become a better person. I wanted to become better. I wanted to become lighter. And I had that drive. That drive was primal, just primal thing in my life. And everything else was like secondary, you know. Right now, it's just so much better, even though there are so many problems, but I just go by my life, and there is no something. I'm not driven by something which takes me off what I have to do right now.
Hmm.
So that suffering is gone. Yeah.
Good.
Suffering of being driven.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, I well remember it. And for
I remember it too.
yeah, and in my own life, I almost couldn't tell you when, but somehow it just relaxed. You've used the word relaxed before. I think it's an important word. I just relaxed out of that, and I still feel that there is tremendous growth and discovery yet to undergo.
Yes.
All kinds of wonderful possibilities, who knows? But it's no longer driven by a sense of need or yearning or
Yes.
desperation or emptiness or inadequacy or any of those things.
Yes. And since I sit in Vipassana before a lot,
Hmm.
I become a connoisseur of the sensations in the body, you know,
Hmm.
like somebody who tries a lot of wine, he
Hmm.
will become a connoisseur of wine, right?
Right.
And I could just like discern sensations in the body,
Hmm.
and those sensations of seeking gone,
Mm.
just gone, just got um,
Yeah. They
from the body.
they dissolved.
They are not there anymore.
Right.
Yes.
So even now you may sit and notice sensations in the body, but the old yearning, seeking kind of thing is gone.
Yes, that is zero right now. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And you know, some people say, "Well, give up the search." That could be a premature instruction. I mean, you know, it's not like you can just drop it, but at a certain point, it drops.
Yeah. And to add to the answer, I would say what the guy was writing in the email, it's just the first step, and takes different people different time to realize different things. So it's not nothing happens overnight.
Hmm.
Of course, once you see through illusion, a lot disappears
Yeah.
immediately, but everyone is individual and everyone's unfoldment is individual. So there is no set rule. If you see divinity or emptiness straight away, it's everyone goes their own way as
Yeah.
before. Yeah, it's just a line. It's
I
just
thought
a
of
line.
an analogy when I was thinking about this interview. You know, if you're in a pitch black room and you strike a match, it can be very dazzling, and you know, to kind of almost blinding. You can feel like, whoa, the room is really fully illuminated now with this match light. But someone who is accustomed to a fully illuminated room would think the room is still really quite dark. So I think there could be a tendency for people who have some initial awakening or realization, perhaps even going through this gate you mentioned, who feel like, whoa, this is it, I'm done.
Well, the match is not the fire. You need to make a fire and make it burn to illuminate everything else.
Right. So, but it is quite common that I talk to a lot of people, and that some initial realization, in the big picture of things, it really is preliminary. Might be very significant and very profound, but still in the big picture, preliminary, is mistaken as some kind of final, ultimate, destination or realization.
We have different people coming to us. We have people coming who are like 18 years old, and they're young, and they never went through any spiritual search. They have this initial realization. Some of them feel like this is it. Mm-hmm. And it lasts like a month.
Yeah. Right.
Then they come back. Yes, and we continue to work with them. We have people coming who are 40 years in the spiritual search. We have people coming who are teachers of, like we had Vipassana meditation teacher.
Yeah, I read his story.
Yes. Yeah. Was very interesting to work with him. Mm-hmm. Who basically they looked all their life, and they gone through a lot of mind purification already. Mm-hmm. So they worked on their conditioning for many years. They just needed a little push. So this surge, this drivenness relaxed. So we deal with different people. That's why in the beginning, me and Ilona created this group, Unleashed, and now we have more groups to help. Beyond the Gate, we have group, Useful
That's all
Talk.
on Facebook, yeah.
Yes, on Facebook, yes. We created these groups to help people with, they come from different places, different age and different experiences. Mm-hmm. And after the gate, they have different experiences too with their conditioning. So we help to show them that it's not the end, and kind of don't expect that if you are not in peace because of your conditioning, that's something wrong with you.
Right.
Or that you haven't seen it.
Yes.
Right. Do you ever have anybody come to you whom you feel like, hey, what are you coming to me for? Your experience is way beyond mine.
What do you mean, Rick?
And do you ever have people coming to you whom you feel are actually more spiritually advanced than yourself, more clear in their understanding, deeper in their realization or something, and you feel like, you should be teaching me, not the other way around?
Oh, when this teacher came to me,
this Vipassana guy?
Yes.
Yeah.
He's ordained Buddhist monk, mm-hmm. and he's Vipassana teacher. When he came to me, I actually I had no idea how I will be working with him. But this is the art of this. This is the art. It's not comes from the mind. You sit with somebody and you just look at where they are right now, and somehow you're in this space. The only space that I feel when I work with people, that there is no this separate entity. That's the only thing, right? I have to be, and I am, right? Mm-hmm. So with whatever they come, they get into the space of me not as a separate entity. And I'm calling them, and calling them there.
Mm-hmm.
So they may be advanced, but if if they still have that identification, I will be calling them to one and only place. Look there, look there. They probably know more than me, and they went through more mind purification than me. I work only with this small identification. That's only
Mm-hmm.
what I do.
No, I totally understand. So you have a very systematic set of tools, so to speak, and those tools can be helpful to someone regardless of where they're at.
Where they come from, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, regardless, absolutely, yes. Some people come lately who saw that self does not exist, and they want to serve, they want to be part of the community, worldwide community that somehow created.
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask them questions and ask them to answer honestly, and they start to look. They could just like write me already what they realized. But one guy recently said, you know, I wanted to use this opportunity to look further.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything, Ilona? You don't have to. I'm just checking to make sure that you have a chance. Okay. There a couple of questions come to mind. Do you feel that the world exists?
Anything said.
Might sound like a funny question, but let's say a tree. Let's take a tree. Does a tree really exist?
Well, it exists more than a Batman.
More than a Batman, okay. But I'll tell you where I'm going with this. Like, take the tree, look more closely, and you just see cells. Now, those don't really resemble a tree. Go down
Well, you
more.
don't see cells.
No, but if you have the right instruments, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and go more deeply, and you just see, let's say, molecules. Those don't look like a tree at all. Go more deeply, you just see atoms. Those don't look like anything like a tree. Go more deeply, you just have subatomic particles. Go more deeply than that, you have nothing. You have a field of pure potentiality that out of which trees and elephants and everything else can arise, but no trees there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, there is seeing the tree, there is feeling the tree, and
yeah, but is that
an
real?
image of a tree.
Sure. But those are all, what are you really seeing or feeling? It's just sort of the human sensory apparatus says tree for a bat.
An image of a tree.
An image of a tree, yeah. So when I was thinking about this, when I was thinking about your no self thing, because in a way you could say the same thing of the universe that we can say of the so-called existence of a self. If you look deeply enough, there isn't one.
But there is a story about it.
There's a story about it, just as there is a story about a self. So in that sense,
And about a tree.
And about a tree. So in that sense, you could say, we're embodied beings. We have bodies, physical bodies with blood and bones and all that. We have subtler aspects of these bodies, intellect, senses, smell, taste, touch, mind. And in that sense, you could say we have a self. But how real is it? Ultimately, there's a felt sense of I. If you smash your toe onto something, it's not the couch that feels the pain. There's some kind of localized experience of pain.
But it's not the eye that senses the pain.
It's the sensory apparatus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An eye is just a label that we stuck on it. And
Yeah.
think it's the eye that senses the pain.
But if there weren't consciousness, you wouldn't know that there was pain. There would be unconscious. Let's say you were heavily sedated on, morphine or something.
Well, of course, if you get an operation, you don't feel pain. I mean,
Right.
the body is knocked out. The
So-
nerves are frozen.
Mm-hmm. So consciousness is the foundation or essential constituent of experience. Pain, happiness, pleasure, seeing, hearing, tasting. It's the ingredient which is there regardless of the particular experience a person is having. Would you agree?
I agree that person not having an experience.
Well, right now, an experience is taking place. We're talking to each other.
Yes.
And
But there is no person here.
no,
There
but
is talking.
later
There's
on
seeing.
we'll be eating dinner or watching a movie or whatever we're doing. Those are
There's still no person.
there's still no person, but there's consciousness.
Yes, and that is not a person.
Right. But that consciousness now is what many spiritual teachers have been saying for thousands of years is what you really are. It's not a person. It's a field. It's kind of it's an unlocalized field, and if you want to know what you are, realize that in its fullness.
Yes, I agree completely.
Okay.
But you start saying that there is a person, then that field shrinks into this.
Yeah. Well, here's an interesting question. Now, I interviewed Tony Parsons maybe a year ago or so. Tony Parsons, and he's big on this point of it's just life walling or life watering or whatever. It's just the essence of life expressing as these appearances, and that there is no person. That's one of his main themes, and he concludes from that since there is no person, there couldn't be reincarnation because that implies the existence of a person that would reincarnate. There couldn't be karma because that implies the existence of a person to whom the karma will be delivered, and so on. And I have an answer to that, but I wonder if you also think that way. Or haven't you thought about it? I don't know. I'm asking either of you.
Oh, okay. I can say that we can speculate, but I just trust my own experience, and I'm not big on speculating about something bigger.
Okay.
If I'm in the middle of experience and I feel fullness, as I said, right? I feel fullness. Or like you remember, like Nisargadatta said, I know that I'm nothing, and I also know that I'm everything. So basically, he said it in the middle of his experience.
Yes.
So I only can talk from my experience.
That's good.
Yes.
Well, the reason I brought it up is that, in Tony Parsons' case, he was quite adamant about it. He wasn't speculating. And I shouldn't pick on him because he's a delightful guy. I like him.
I like him too.
Yeah. But sometimes people take that kind of understanding and they jump to conclusions. Like, for instance, they say, oh, well, since there is no self, no person, you shouldn't bother with spiritual practices because that only will reinforce the notion of a person.
But
to which I would answer, then you shouldn't bother eating because that only reinforces the notion of an eater.
But we already again talking about people taking somebody else's words, somebody else's experience, and talking from the mind. It just doesn't work. It just I don't know. It just doesn't work. If you're in your own experience and you feel nothing or everything, there will be no question of this is it. I don't need to do anything. There will be no questions in that space. You just will know for yourself, and for everybody is different.
Right.
It's completely different. I know what is for me. That's what all I know. What is for me? I don't know what is for Ilona or for somebody else. I know that, and I don't even know what is for me tomorrow. I know what is for me right now. I'm talking and I'm expressing from this space, and then I will make a next step when it appears.
That sounds good. Now I like that. Do you want to add anything to that, Ilona?
Yes. What was I gonna say?
It'll come back to you. As soon as it comes back, you just interrupt, okay?
Okay.
As soon as you remember. Okay. No, I like that. It's very genuine and honest. I think that you're not.
Oh, yes.
Oh, good. Good. I knew
Yes.
it would come back.
Okay. It did. Well, we are not teaching people what is what or how life works or what is it made of or what is this.
Okay.
We don't know. Have a look
Good.
for yourself and make up your own mind.
Mhm.
That's it.
Good. So you have a specialty, you could say, and you stick to your
Yes.
specialty. You're not
Yeah.
gonna
Yes.
get into somebody else's
We
business or
help people to cross that line. The rest, it's not up to us.
up to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where they go, how they go, what they want to investigate, explore, it's really not up to us. We have these groups so we can talk to each other and share experiences, but no one there in any group says, this is like this.
Yeah.
I'm the boss. Listen to what I say. No. We only say investigate, check if it's true.
Do you find that sometimes people are, I don't know what word you would use, they're kind of certified as having passed through the gate prematurely? Does it turn out, 6 months down the line, you feel like, well, based what this person seems to be experiencing now, maybe we shouldn't have given them, a gold star?
Okay, it's very, very simple because the belief in a separate self is really the same like a belief in Santa or in any other magical story. So let's say you are a kid and you believe that there is a tooth fairy, and then one day you find out it was your mom. So you don't believe in that story anymore. No matter how much time comes, whatever happens in your life, you will never gonna believe in that story anymore. You know that tooth fairy is a fantasy. So there is no way back. Once you see it, you see it. If you don't see it, you can believe anything you like, you can say anything you like, but it's just seeing itself, that sorts out problem for good. And if let's say somebody says after some time, oh, I believe I didn't see it, there is the only question, can you ever believe that there is this separate self that is driving your body and taking care of life and managing everything? And no one ever said, yes, I believe that again. No, it would be the same as believing in Santa again,
Yeah, but to me, the word belief has a pretty superficial connotation. I don't really care what a person believes or doesn't believe. And we've been touching upon this point in the interview. What interests me is what their actual experience is. So, like here's a couple of quotes from people, for instance, who've been through your thing. Here's a person who says, although I have seen through the self and see that this ghostly presence is indeed fictitious, I still have a clear feeling of being a separate self. Here's another one. 1 year later, and I'm still not so enlightened. Painful to see all the things I thought I would escape linger on. I thought I was so enlightened in the first few months post-gate, but now... and the reason I'm reading those is not to put you on the spot, but to suggest that just the belief or the intellectual understanding that there is no personal self, one can be totally, believing that, like, okay, no Santa Claus, no Easter Bunny, no personal self, but it may not go that deep in terms of actually impacting a person's life or bringing about some genuine, profound realization.
Yes, and actually, again, we come to the same what we talk about, because a lot of people come to us and they are all different, and they all have different conditioning, and they all have different expectations. And seeing that self does not exist is important, but also then the conditioning comes up. And if somebody is not ready to look at the conditioning, he freaks out and, oh, nothing happens. And it's actually, I'm still suffering, That's why we created all these groups, like we call it aftercare. And actually what I do, I'm not a teacher in any sense, anti-teacher probably, but I'm very transparent in my own being. And unfolding here is kind of was very dramatic
like you said, dramatic word before. And I'm sharing this openly, very openly, like, look, here I am, and this is what happened in my life. The only difference that I have and you have is a trust in a flow of life. And my flow is really dramatic, and I trust for some reason, maybe because I was sitting in Vipassana so many years. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe,
Could be, could be.
right. But because by my experience in Vipassana, seeing, basically, what is Vipassana? Vipassana is seeing life as it is, not as you would like it to be. And in Vipassana, you actually sit and look life, like watch life as it is. And I'm continue to do the same. I'm just watching life as it is. That's why I have this trust, and I bring this trust and to other people to just see how even with difficulties, this is it. This is
Right.
life. And when you try to be peaceful, when you try to be like somebody else, when you compare, this is escape from life. This is what we call spiritual bypassing, right? So
Yeah, good points. Do you want to add anything to that, Ilona?
Well, it all comes back to expectations. If you expect enlightenment to happen after you see yourself, well, you're going to suffer about that.
So would you agree then that perhaps you use the word liberation a little bit liberally or generously? And we've kind of covered this because you've acknowledged many times that, you know, this passing through the gate is really just a start. And maybe you don't say that that is liberation. I don't know. Personally, I would, words are just agreed upon terms that, you know, we have to just sort of agree on their meanings if we're going to communicate. And I kind of like to use the word liberation in a more ultimate sense, as well as the word enlightenment. But you know, someone who says, okay, you know, I passed through this gate a year ago and I'm still not so enlightened. Would you say that person is liberated in your terminology, or they're just kind of, they made a good start and we'll see how they go from here?
we don't use word enlightenment, but we use word liberation.
Yeah.
And actually, liberation from what, right? I would ask people, for example, how does it feel to be liberated? And this question is like a Zen koan that will show me by their answer where they are. And then I would ask, liberated from what? Liberated from illusion of the separate entity. That's what we mean. That's all it is. Liberation in more ultimate sense, like liberated from all the conditioning, from all the sankharas. No, we don't we don't do these services.
Yeah.
The first step.
That's the sense.
Taken,
I'm
but
sorry.
it's not there.
I'm sorry, Ilona. Say it again. I interrupted.
It's the first step that needs to be taken on the way to complete liberation. Without that first step, there is no liberation.
Okay. So that's fair enough. So you guys are like first step specialists.
Yes,
Oh yes, we are.
a whole loads of us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. No, as long as that's the understanding, I think it's honest and it's helpful, because it's not, I mean, you yourself have said very nicely, Elena, that you just are what you are and you experience what you experience, and you don't want to kind of extrapolate beyond that. And you know, and so you're obviously not interested in misrepresenting yourself or what you're doing. You're trying to be as honest and candid and direct as possible, from what I hear you saying.
Yeah, and I'm not only trying, I am honest.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Good. So that helps clarify. And so just back to one more point, which I found troubling, because you know, I didn't see this directly, but someone emailed me and they said that, you know, you guys really sort of object to the way some of these teachers are teaching, like, I named their names earlier, and I've interviewed pretty much all these people except for one maybe whom I'm going to interview in October. When you listen, maybe you don't spend the time to listen to other teachers, but when you do you feel that there's something about the approach that many teachers are taking that is it just doesn't jibe with your approach? You disagree with what they're saying or something, or what?
Actually, I stopped watching all other teachers and I stopped reading all the books. It's just this need of listening to somebody dropped. Like it's just not there anymore, and I can't even make myself read a book or watch somebody's video. Said that, I actually, before this interview, I went and I watched you interviewed Ben Smythe, and I really like him.
Yeah, he's great.
Yes, yes. And I watched his videos before, and actually I totally agree what he is saying. And he is also transparent, and he is what he is. And I actually very much enjoyed that interview with him. But about others, I didn't watch much of people.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
And how about you, Ilona? Any response to that?
It's just very funny that people email that.
Well,
We don't reject anyone.
Okay. I mean, people actually use the word that you actually hate one of these guys, and I thought, well, I don't know.
I would.
I don't read your blog, so I don't know.
Who is writing this? And
Well,
why?
the person wouldn't want me to reveal their name, but
Of course, I'm not asking who. It's just funny.
yeah, but why would they be writing this? So no one's gonna post after this interview examples of things you've actually said about Bentinho or one of these people that maybe it's some people who were like students of yours who said this stuff and you're getting the blame for it. I don't know.
Well, we had a thing with Bentinho that was over a year ago.
What was your problem with Bentinho?
Oh, well, he was saying relax. We were saying, okay, if you relax, you're not gonna.
Were you saying that
conclusion.
it wasn't sufficient to just relax? Is that what you were saying?
Yes.
Okay.
We were talking about self-realization, which is investigation and clearing the confusion in the mind.
Yeah.
What he was saying is if you just relax and do this and do that and do nothing, then you will realize. And I don't know, different approach. It does work after you cross the line, not so much before you cross the line. If you want to end the search, you investigate. That was the only thing. We never said anything about Rupert Spira or whoever else.
Okay. Well, to tell you the truth, I actually had the same problem with Bentinho. I love the guy. He's totally sweet, but I sort of felt like just relaxing to 3 to 5 seconds isn't going to have that much of an effect. But I kind of gave him the benefit of the doubt, and I thought, okay, well, maybe he knows something here that I don't. But it just didn't seem to me that it's going to really pop a person through, you know?
No, it's not going to pop a person.
But maybe it does. Maybe some of the people...
But it's really helpful after.
Yeah.
It all comes to noticing what it is. But
well, and I think he is at a point where he is after, for him, relaxing for 3 to 5 seconds actually really does something profound. But for the average person, there's so many layers of conditioning that you really don't get past very many of the layers if you just relax for 3 to 5 seconds at a stoplight or whatever, before.
Yeah. I actually have been working with people using different methods that kind of popped spontaneously. It's asking the mind and the heart itself if they are at peace. And if they are not at peace, what's in the way, and just finding that one belief that is running away from childhood that is making this chaos in the system. It cannot get rid of because it's in the mind, it's doing its job, and it's nothing wrong with that. But seeing that, how it runs, noticing that mechanism, it actually resolves the problem, and this is relaxes, it's release. So, yeah, you can relax for 3 seconds 50 times a day. It's not going to reach that place where you actually go in with somebody that holds your focus, asks the mind itself, and listens to what it has to say, and then it is what is in a way of feeling at peace. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rick, can I add also?
Sure.
I would say also why we had that with Bentinho. Um, I would say about myself, not about Ilona. I think I had I had some conditioning was working. I actually notice a lot of people go through different conditioning, and one of them is um, a kind of a judgmental, judgment sensations,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I would say right now, even if you put me with Ben and tell have an argument, I'm not sure if I will even have an argument, because I think that conditioning just worked out
I
itself,
see. So
you
you were
know.
you were going through a phase, maybe.
And he is also.
Absolutely. I mean, his teaching has evolved a lot in the last year.
So he actually went through the same working out of judgment conditioning about what we do.
Okay.
So and on that we actually helped each other.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I saw at that point that message, it doesn't matter what's the message, it lands exactly where it has to land.
Yeah.
Anyone can say anything, and it may be true for somebody, but not so true for somebody else.
Exactly. I mean, we're all in the same big boat together, and as I see it, I mean, I've talked. You're like 135 interviews now. I think yours will be, or 6 maybe. And every single person I talked to had something of value, and it wasn't necessarily a value to the whole world, but it was a value to the people who connected with them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would say that of every teacher in the world, I mean, some of whom might, from one perspective, be quite deluded, but they're serving a value for the people that are attracted to them. And maybe in the big picture of things, it's relatively not so valuable, but who knows? I mean, I go out and pick up dog poop in the yard every day, and there's certain bugs that love it. So everything everything has its value.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I agree to that too. Yes.
Yeah, so we're all doing what we can, I think the Beatles sang, and we're all making a contribution.
And
Yeah.
actually this judgment conditioning, um, it's interesting because I just as that spiritual search drivenness, the judgment also, I would not say it's zero. I can't access that much, but it's so low. I'm actually amazed, and this is one of the benefit. Like we started from benefits, what we do,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
One of the benefit that it's just so much acceptance to all the variety of everything in life. There is no judgment, because if you judge something, then it's kind of, then you don't see that it's part of the life, then it's something separate from life. And it can't be, anything can't be separate from life. Everything is.
Absolutely.
I sound like Tony Parsons probably.
No, you're absolutely right. And Jesus said, "Judge not, lest ye be judged." Um, and yeah. So anyway, that's the point. Ilona, were you trying to say something?
No.
Okay. So good. We've covered some good points, and that's what I meant in the beginning when I was talking about benefits. I didn't mean like get bigger muscles or a new car or anything like that. I was talking about subtler stuff like this. Becoming less judgmental, becoming more loving, perhaps. Being that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we
But
talk
that's
about
when you stop. I'm sorry.
Ilona?
That's about the resistance.
Pardon?
If you resist what is, oh,
Dogs barking.
That's Rick's dog.
Yeah, yeah.
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 She gets excited and wants dog biscuits and barks.
Actually, can we talk about love?
Sure, yeah, please.
Yeah. As we talk about benefits, right? What we do this process is actually Ilona said, investigating what is and deconstructing what is not true in the mind. And it's actually mind realization. But what I notice after that, it can go also into opening of the heart,
Yes.
which happens to me, which happens to Ilona, which happened to a lot of people who are actually serving selflessly, absolutely, in
Oh,
their
I can
own
hear you.
free time, um, just because something is going on in the heart, you know. And I served a lot in Vipassana before, and this is like a continuous process, and it's always further with opening of the heart. And this is actually what further for me. When you asked before, Rick, like where you going, something like where you see yourself.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
So this is a direction you see happening.
This is the direction I
right.
see happening, the opening of the heart.
That's
yes.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a compassion, which is like word compassion does not even touch what I sometimes feel. You know.
Yeah. I know you don't like the term self-realization maybe, but when people use that term, they're essentially meaning what you mean by seeing no self, because but very often in some spiritual traditions, self-realization is considered to be the foundation of deep unfolding of the heart. And you know that prior to that there isn't the kind of, it's like a small pond which if it tries to rise up in waves, it just stirs up the mud at the bottom, but a deep ocean can rise up in great big tidal waves without stirring up mud, you know.
We don't have problems with words. We know words are just words, and experience is experience. And that experience, it cannot be described in words.
Right.
Because in the end, that what is, it cannot be described. It
Like
can be experience, but not put in words.
Right.
Yes. We can call it whatever name.
Well, speaking
as long as you know what's behind.
Yeah, as long as you know what you're actually talking about with the words. Words are just like little signposts.
That's where people connect.
Yeah.
They know what they're talking about.
If we weren't using words, we couldn't have this interview. We'd just sit and stare at each other. Actually, before this interview, I was thinking about love and with relation to your whole thing. And I was thinking of that phrase, love your neighbor as yourself. And, superficially, that doesn't mean much because most people don't even love themselves. They're in an individual sense. And so, they're not going to do so well by the neighbor. But I think what that phrase really refers to is, seeing the neighbor as the self. And by self, I just mean the deeper consciousness, seeing that, we're the same thing.
Yeah.
And you look at an insect or something and feel this wave of love because you see the most refined value in that little life, in that little being, or what's save an insect, a human being. Yeah.
What touched me recently on Facebook, I saw a phrase, a very simple phrase that spoke to me, and I'll tell you what it is. God, give me wisdom so I can have kindness for all. God,
Nice.
give me wisdom so I can have just kindness for all, right?
It's beautiful. Yeah.
It's very difficult to have kindness for all when some of them, so to speak, doing wrong or something different what you like.
Yeah.
So only when you really see, when you really see the truth, then you can be kind for everything.
Well, think of Jesus on the cross. I mean, the guys are nailing nails into his wrists, and he's saying, "Forgive them, Father. They know not what they do."
Yes.
There's the feeling of kindness and love to those people.
Yes, I definitely feel it now. Yes, I can understand. I totally feel what it means. Yes.
Yeah. I don't
Well,
think I would feel it under those circumstances. I'm not that wise, but can aspire to that maybe. What were you going to say, Ilona?
I was going to say that it actually all started when we met with Elena in London, and she took me to my first satsang with Pamela Wilson.
Uh-huh.
And I saw this kindness that this woman had. It blew my mind. And then I found that in me, and that's how we started this whole gig. Yeah,
that's nice. It's interesting how we're all sort of interbreeding, so to speak. You know, it's like one person inspires another person. Like Pamela Wilson, I love Pamela Wilson. I think she's great, and hope to interview her again one of these days. And it's just like there's this kind of very wholesome contagion spreading throughout the world, where people are kind of infecting each other with this higher sort of consciousness or whatever.
And we both, me and Ilona, using Pamela's technique, if we can call it like this, Pamela's method, to work with difficult emotions, with emotions that well up when this process of looking, of direct pointing what we do, and actually this made a difference from the beginning. We have to sometimes use a Zen stick, because mind is so conditioned. We need, like in Zen they use koans, right, to kind of shock the mind. So we do use, I curse sometimes and it shocked people and it shut down their mind, and they look and they see. But I also use kindness. So it depends, what somebody needs in this situation. Like, for example, some woman came to me and I said to her, I would use, I don't remember how exactly I said, something like, I would hold your hand or slap your face. Depends on what you need.
Right. Yeah. Different strokes for different folks.
I use one stroke for everyone. I ask them questions.
Yeah,
and actually process is evolving. I stepped out a little bit from, for several months, I didn't guide people. I stepped out to sort my life situation. And Ilona continued to work, and her process is evolved. Since I don't read anything right now, I didn't even read her also, so I don't know where she is right now. So I came back right now to guide people and help others to learn how to guide, and also starting to change how I do it, just finding what works and what doesn't, and it's just by experience and by my own intuition.
Yeah, I think that'll probably keep happening as long as you continue doing this, you know.
Of course. And we have a whole group of guides now, so we learn from each other.
Yeah. That's good.
We have a lot of material. We put a lot of, like we have a book, right? I want to use this opportunity to show the book.
Yeah. And I've read a good portion of it myself.
Cool.
You also have I guess you sent it to me as a PDF because I read it on my Kindle. And it's good. It's interesting. It gives you kind of what the book is. Well, you say what it is. You can say it better than me.
Oh, okay. Actually, the book is made from the conversations with people. I think it was 1.5 years ago. We worked with a lot of people. We were in the beginning.
A year ago. That was a year ago.
Yeah.
In summer, in July.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And actually, I have many people contact me, and Ilona probably too, who read the book, and they either saw the illusion or they are very close. So the book is very useful. I had many people who come and they already almost there. They just need a little push, like a personal touch, you know.
Yeah.
Because everything I already said in this book, right? But everybody needs just a personal touch. because everybody in a different place, and I would ask a question and see where they are, ask a couple of questions, here they are.
Yeah. You know the word Maya,
Yeah.
Yeah,
which is usually translated as illusion.
yeah.
You might find it interesting, but what that word actually means is that which is not.
That which is not, yes.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that's the roots of the word. It's that which is not, and obviously you could say which never was. You know.
Yes, never would.
Yeah.
Well, what we have now is actually from today. We have an application on an Android, and it also can be run on PC. It's called Enlightening Quotes from Liberation Unleashed.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've done with the 12 people over 6 weeks, we collected the best quotes, best pointers from the forum. We actually had to go through over 1,000 of pages
Wow.
and collect the best quotes. Then we organized them in categories and set up a nice, neat little program so people can download it for free on their Android and just go through all these categories when they're ready. So you really don't need a guide, you just need the right question. And that application is going to provide exactly that. So if somebody read a book, went through the application, they may need just a tiny, tiny little thing to see, and it's pop.
Good. So that's
So,
on
yeah,
Liberation
that's very-
Unleashed. They can download that from there.
It's on Google Play. You actually need to search for Liberation Unleashed, and there's enlightening quotes.
Okay. Well, your audio is deteriorating as we speak, so maybe we should wrap this up. And I'll do you want to make any concluding remarks? And then I'm going to say something about how people can get in touch with you and everything. Any final statements you want to make?
Yes, I actually want to tell people who don't know anything about Liberation Unleashed that it's not just me and Ilona, even though I like us, but it's more than us, okay? It's the whole network of people all around the world who are selflessly volunteer their expertise in, for example, publishing book and editing, computers, guiding other people. It's a community.
And you're not charging money.
No, we
No.
don't charge money. Yes,
Okay,
we
okay.
don't.
We
And
don't even have donate button.
Yeah, I have one too. I understand that.
yes, and it's interesting because the way it's all unfolded just pointed me that it's beneficial for people.
Yeah, there we go
Just-
again. Beneficial, hear that?
Just because it was so easy and so effortless. Right people just come and do whatever they inspired to do. I'm inspired to teach right now how to guide other people to see the illusion. I just do it. Ilona do some of her process. Somebody was inspired to create this application for Android and actually doing it for iPhone too, because I have iPhone. I asked for iPhone application. So everything is effortlessly, and people just contribute their own time and energy and expertise just from inspiration. And
That's great.
Yeah, and I just want to I am so grateful to everybody who is contributing, and I also grateful to a lot of established teachers. Like, we are not teachers, but there are some established teachers who call themselves teachers, and I appreciate some of them.
You mean like Pamela Wilson or people like
Pamela
that?
Wilson, yes, like Pamela Wilson, like Daniel Ingram, like Scott Kiloby, Ben Smythe. Some of them saw the benefit what we do from the beginning, and by just supporting us with that, like Pamela just right away linked her website to our website without any questions. It just touched me so much, you know.
Great.
Yeah, and I so appreciate that.
Yeah, me too, absolutely.
Good.
It's amazing to see how all these people come together on this mission to wake everyone else up. And it's amazing to be part of it.
So did you hear, Rick, this? The next Buddha is a community.
I've heard that the Buddha is the next Buddha is the Sangha. They say.
Yeah,
You know?
that's what I feel here.
Yeah.
That's what I feel, definitely. Because we are ordinary people all over the world helping each other to see what is actually real and what is not. And end this search and just relax and start living the life what is. And we don't need to go to endless retreats with a teacher. We just like help each other.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I would say if
satsang.
yeah, and I would say, you know, to in the interest of open-mindedness, if somebody wants to go to a retreat with a teacher, great. That's what they should.
Yeah. Of course, yes.
Yeah.
And
Like
actually,
like you went to Adyashanti, it had a nice
yeah,
effect.
and I went to Rupert Spira.
Yeah, there you go.
I actually like him very much.
Yeah, he's great. I like him too.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Well, this has been fun. So let me make a couple of concluding remarks. I've been Well, I always feel funny saying this because if a person's been listening this long, they know who I've been speaking with. And but I've been speaking with Ilona Ciunaite and Elena Nezhinsky of Liberation Unleashed. This is an ongoing series of interviews that you've been watching one of, and they can all be found on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel, and I think YouTube will notify you whenever a new one is posted. They can also be found at batgap.com, BATGAP, and there you will also find a link to an audio podcast if you'd rather just listen to this as an audio on your iPod or your iPhone or something. And you also find a little discussion group that crops up around every interview, which sometimes gets quite lively. So each interview has its own little discussion area. So feel free to participate in that. Try to keep it on topic if possible. There's a general discussion area for posting your favorite rock band's video or whatever. And that about covers it. There's also an email tab there. If you click on it, you can sign up to be notified of emails whenever a new interview is posted. You get one email, one a week. And as I mentioned, there's a donate button, which if you feel the urge to click it, remember no one is in control, so just let it happen. So thanks, ladies. And it's been a joy.
Well, it has been a pleasure. Thank you very much for
Yeah,
having
I'm glad we managed to get it together. It was technically a challenge, but we did it.
us. Yeah, we did.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.